The large doors of the Grand Council chamber closed with a soft sound. Commander Susan Miller did not look back. Her steps were firm as she walked away from the place where humans had sat for 50 years. The other human representatives followed behind her, faces serious, and backs straight. In the chamber, hundreds of alien beings sat in shock. No species had ever left the Galactic Council before. Not in its 40,000 years of existence. Susan reached the main hallway of Proxima Station. The blue-skinned Alari and tall, thin Belnari diplomats moved out of her way. Some looked scared. Others looked angry. "Commander Miller, call the voice." It was High Chancellor Zorik, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly. "This display is unnecessary. Return to the chamber and we can discuss your concerns properly." Susan stopped walking. The human delegation stood still behind her. "We tried discussion for 50 years, Chancellor," she said. 50 years of being ignored. 50 years of being treated like children. It ends today." Chancellor Zorik's skin changed from green to purple, a sign of his rising anger. "You humans are throwing a tantrum because we would not agree to your paranoid defense plans. The Void Swarm is a minor concern, not worth the resources you demand." Susan smiled without humor. "And that is exactly why we're leaving." She turned to her communication officer. "Paul, what's the status of our exit?" Lieutenant Paul Evans checked his wrist device. "Human ships are undocking from all Council stations across the galaxy. Earth Embassy staffs are evacuating as planned. We'll be the last to leave." Susan nodded. "Good." A small crowd of aliens had gathered to watch. Many species were represented: the crystal-bodied Lumari, the 4-armed Tellarites, the gas-filled environment suits of the methane-breathing Vox. For centuries, they had all looked down on humans as the newcomers, the primitives. Ambassador Greg Wilson, the most senior human diplomat, stepped forward. His white hair and lined face showed his age, but his voice was strong. "For 50 years, we brought you new ideas. We solved problems you couldn't solve. We defended borders you couldn't defend. And still, you treated us as lesser beings." He looked around at the gathered aliens. "You will soon learn what the galaxy is like without us." A nervous Tellarite diplomat pushed forward. "But the trade agreements, the defense treaties, the technology exchanges, you cannot simply walk away." "Watch us," said Greg. Susan's device beeped. She checked it and nodded to the delegation. "Our ship is ready. It's time to go." As they moved toward the docking bay, an Alari scientist named Elora ran up to them. Unlike the others, she looked genuinely sad. "Susan, please," she said quietly. "Not all of us think like the council leaders. Many of us value humanity's contributions." Susan's face softened slightly. Elora had been one of the few alien scientists who had worked well with humans, who had never dismissed their ideas. "I know, Elora, but we've made our decision. The Council has ignored our warnings for too long. The Void Swarm is coming, whether they believe it or not." Elora's blue face looked pained. "What should we do when they arrive?" Susan hesitated, then pressed a small data chip into Elora's hand. "This contains our research on Void Swarm movements and weaknesses. It might help." The human delegation reached the docking bay. Through the large windows, they could see their ship, the Earth vessel Defiance, its engines glowing as it prepared to leave. "Commander," said Lieutenant Evans, "Earth Command confirms all human vessels and personnel have now left Council space, except for us." Susan took one last look at the grand station that had been humanity's connection to the galactic community. For 50 years, humans had tried to be good galactic citizens. For 50 years, they had been patient. That patience had run out. "Let's go home," she said. As the humans boarded their ship, whispers spread through the alien crowds. Some were angry, some confused, but many were afraid. Deep down, more than they would admit, they had come to rely on the strange, unpredictable humans and their unusual ways of solving problems. The Defiance undocked from Proxima Station and moved away, its engines flaring bright against the darkness of space. Behind it, the first tremors of panic began to spread through the Galactic Council. Humanity had left, and the universe would never be the same. 3 months passed quickly. Admiral John Davis stood at the large window of New Montana's defense station. The human colony was thriving now that it was free from Council rules. Ships came and went as they pleased. New buildings rose on the planet below. A light flashed on his control panel. Incoming message. Priority 1. Put it through, he said. The screen lit up to show an Alari face. It was Science Director Kelter, his blue skin now pale with worry. Admiral Davis, said Kelter, I hope you remember me from the Joint Defense Project. John nodded. He remembered Kelter as one of the few Alari who had respected human ideas. What can I do for you, Director? I thought the Council ordered all contact with humans to stop. Kelter looked around nervously. This is not an official call. The Rhizon hegemony has attacked 3 outer systems. They have taken Proxima 7, Belner 2, and Teller Prime. John tried not to show his surprise. The Rhizon were fierce warriors, but they had stayed in their own territory for centuries. They were always afraid of human unpredictability, continued Kelter. But now that you're gone, they see the Council as weak. John walked to his desk and pulled up star charts. What is the Council's response? Kelter's laugh was bitter. The Council believed their defense systems were perfect, but the Rhizon found ways around them in ours, systems that your engineers always said had flaws. John remembered those meetings. Human defense experts pointing out weaknesses in Alari shield technology. The Alari dismissing human concerns as primitive thinking. I'm sorry to hear that, said John. But what do you expect us to do? We are no longer part of the Council. We need help, said Kelter simply. The Rhizon will reach the core systems within weeks. John's second-in-command, Captain Betty Lewis, stepped into view. Admiral, the Council made their choice. They chose to ignore our warnings about defense, just like they ignored our warnings about the Void Swarm. She had a point, but John also knew that millions of innocent beings lived in those systems. I will take your message to Earth Command, he told Kelter. That's all I can promise. After Kelter's image disappeared, Betty crossed her arms. They only call when they need something. True, said John. But this Rhizon expansion could threaten our borders eventually. In another part of the galaxy, Economic Advisor Karen Phillips was finishing her inspection of the new human trade hub on Freedom Station. Without Council trade restrictions, human business was booming. A small alien in expensive clothes approached her table in the station's dining area. It was an Ixian, from the Council's capital world. Miss Phillips, said the Ixian softly, I am Diplomat Traz. May I join you? Karen gestured to the empty seat. I didn't think Ixians were allowed to speak with humans anymore. Traz sat down, his 4 hands nervously adjusting his clothes. These are unusual times. I come without official approval. Why risk your career to talk to me? Asked Karen. Traz leaned forward. The galactic economy is failing. Without human trade networks, many systems cannot get needed supplies. Without human innovation, technology markets are stagnant. Karen took a sip of her drink. The Council always said human economic models were too unstable, too risky. We were wrong, admitted Traz. Human adaptability kept trade flowing even during crisis. Now, rigid Council rules are making everything worse. Karen saw real fear in Traz's eyes. The proud Ixians, who had led the Council for thousands of years, were asking for human help. The Council would have to make significant changes before Earth would consider rejoining, she said carefully. Anything, said Traz desperately. The old Council leaders are losing power. Those of us who respected humans are gaining influence. As Karen began to reply, her communication device beeped with an emergency code from Earth Command. The message was brief. Void Swarm sighted at the edge of former Council space. First attacks confirmed. Karen looked at Traz. It seems the Ryzen are not your only problem. The threat we warned you about for years has arrived. Traz's skin turned pale. Without humans, the galaxy is falling apart. Karen stood up. I need to return to Earth immediately. Tell your leaders that if they want human help, they should prepare to accept human terms. As her ship prepared for departure, Karen watched the busy station. In just 3 months, the galaxy had started to unravel without human involvement. And now, with the Ryzen attacking and the Void Swarm approaching, things would only get worse. The Council had never believed that humans were essential to galactic stability. They were about to learn how wrong they had been. 6 months had passed since humanity left the Council. Captain Eric Winters guided his scout ship, the Horizon, toward the edge of what was once Council territory. Earth Command had ordered him to observe, not engage. Just watch and report. Eric had mixed feelings about these orders. He understood why Earth wanted information about the Void Swarm, but staying hidden while others suffered felt wrong. Captain, we're approaching Vesh 3, said Lieutenant Nancy Garcia from her station. Sensors are picking up unusual energy readings. Eric moved to stand behind her. Vesh 3 was a Belnari mining colony, or it had been. On screen, he ordered. The main display showed a planet partially covered in darkness. Not normal darkness. This was deeper, like a stain spreading across the world's surface. Around the planet, strange ships moved in patterns that made no sense. The Void Swarm, said Eric quietly, just as the reports described. Nancy looked up at him. They're attacking the colony, sir. I'm picking up distress signals. Eric watched as one of the strange ships fired a beam of dark energy at a fleeing Belnari vessel. The Belnari ship stopped moving, then seemed to dissolve into the darkness. Sir, said Nancy, her voice tight with emotion, we could help them. The Horizon's weapons might make a difference. Eric understood her feelings. His hands tightened into fists. We have strict orders not to engage. Earth's non-interference directive is clear. But, sir, I don't like it either, Lieutenant, said Eric. But we need to report this accurately. Earth needs to know exactly what we're facing. He returned to his command chair. Record everything. When the Void Swarm leaves, we'll check for survivors. Nancy nodded unhappily and turned back to her station. As they watched, the Void Swarm methodically attacked every structure on Vesh 3. The Belnari defenses did nothing against them. It was not a battle. It was destruction. Back on Earth, the United Earth Senate was in session. The large chamber was filled with representatives from all human worlds and colonies. The main topic, the worsening situation in Council space. Director Alan Howard of Earth Intelligence stood at the speaker's platform. His presentation showed images of Council worlds under attack. The Ryzen hegemony now controls nearly a quarter of former Council territory, he explained, and the Void Swarm has consumed 7 major systems. Senator Mary Bryant raised her hand. Are the Council races fighting back? They're trying, said Alan, but without much success. For centuries, they relied on human military doctrine without developing their own. The Alari defensive systems were designed with human tactical input. The Belnari fleet operations were based on human naval strategies. Without us, they're struggling. Senator Roy Clark stood up. This is not our problem. The Council made their choice when they dismissed our warnings. There were shouts of agreement from some senators. Senator Julia Porter called for quiet. What about the Void Swarm? Is it moving toward human space? Ellen changed the display to show star maps. Not yet. They seem focused on Council territories. But our projections show they will eventually head our way. And if the Council falls completely, we will face the combined threat alone. The Senate chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that humanity should remain isolated and build its defenses. Others insisted that helping former Council worlds was not just moral but practical. Earth Senate called a calm voice from the back of the chamber. It was Admiral Sam White, the highest-ranking officer in Earth's fleet. The room grew quiet. I fought alongside many council species, he said. Yes, their leaders were arrogant. Yes, they ignored our warnings. But there are billions of innocent beings in council space who never made those decisions. They are dying while we debate. Sam walked slowly to the front of the chamber. We warned them about the void swarm. We were right. Do we now sit safely and watch as our predictions come true? What kind of species would that make us? His words hung in the air. President Lisa Evans rose from her seat. We will put it to a vote. Should Earth warn our former allies and offer assistance against the void swarm, or should we maintain our non-interference policy? As senators prepared to vote, a message arrived from Captain Winter's scout ship. The room fell silent as they watched the footage of Vestry, the spreading darkness, the strange ships that seemed to devour rather than destroy. The void swarm was worse than they had predicted, and it was growing stronger with each world it consumed. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The situation was far worse than anyone had predicted. Dr. Marie Wright moved quickly through the crowded halls of Hope's Harbor, a neutral space station on the border between human and former council space. As a human xenobiologist, she had the difficult job of treating alien refugees who arrived daily, fleeing from both the Rhizon hegemony and the void swarm. Doctor, we have more arrivals at Dock 12, said Nurse Steve Powell over her communication device. Mostly Belnari, some Alari. Their colony on Trell 5 was just taken by the Rhizon. Marie sighed. I'm on my way. Prepare emergency supplies. The refugee center was overwhelmed. Beings from dozens of species huddled in groups. Some were injured. All looked scared. When will the Earth ships help us? Asked a young Alari. Her skin was pale blue, showing her exhaustion. Marie had no good answer. Earth had sent some medical supplies, but was still officially maintaining its non-interference policy. The Senate remained divided on what to do. We're doing what we can, she told the child, giving her a nutrition packet. As Marie worked, she noticed a commotion at the main entrance. A large group had arrived, led by an Ixian in official robes. Marie recognized him immediately from news broadcasts. That's High Chancellor Zorik, she whispered to Steve, the head of the Galactic Council. Zorik scanned the room until his 6 eyes found Marie. He walked directly toward her, his once proud posture now bent with worry. Dr. Wright, he said. I was told a human doctor runs this facility. Marie nodded cautiously. I do my best to help everyone, Chancellor. Zorik looked around at the crowded room, at the beings from all corners of the galaxy seeking safety. His voice lowered. I have come to request human intervention, he said, officially, on behalf of the remaining council worlds. Marie tried to hide her surprise. This was the same Zorik who had most strongly opposed humans in council meetings, the same leader who had called humans primitive and dangerous. Chancellor, she said carefully, I'm just a doctor. I don't speak for Earth government. But you can arrange a meeting, insisted Zorik. The council was wrong. We were wrong. Without human innovation, without human unpredictability, we cannot defeat either enemy. Before Marie could answer, the station's alert system activated. A voice announced, Attention all station personnel and visitors. Representatives from 27 former council worlds have just arrived. They are requesting immediate meetings with human officials. Steve looked at his data pad in shock. Doctor, they're all here. The Alari Science Directorate, the Belnari High Command, the Tellarite Trade Union. Everyone who once looked down on humanity is here asking for help. Marie realized that Hope's Harbor had just become the most important diplomatic location in the galaxy. She touched her communication device. This is Dr. Wright. Connect me to Earth Command immediately. Priority Alpha. While waiting for the connection, she turned back to Zorik. What exactly are you offering in return for human help? Zorik stood straighter. Anything. Everything. Equal standing for humans in all galactic affairs. Unrestricted development of human technologies. Full acknowledgement of Earth's sovereign rights. And who agreed to these terms? asked Murray. All of us, said Zorik, gesturing to the newly arrived representatives gathering in the main hall. The old council structure is gone. Most of the former leaders have been removed from power. We are here to build something new. Something better, with humans as equals. Marie's device beeped as Earth Command responded. She took a deep breath before answering. This conversation would change the course of galactic history. In the command center of Hope's Harbor, Station Director Fred Clark watched as more ships arrived. Refugee vessels, diplomatic shuttles, even a few military escort ships from species that had once been enemies. They're all coming to the humans for help, he said to his assistant. After centuries of thinking themselves superior, his assistant looked at the crowded docking display. Will Earth actually help them? Fred thought about the reports he'd seen. The void swarm growing stronger with each world it consumed. The rhizome pushing deeper into former council space. They might, he said, but not on the old terms. The galaxy is about to change forever. Outside the station viewport, against the backdrop of stars, ships continued to arrive from all directions, all carrying the same message. The galaxy needed humanity. The United Earth Senate chamber was packed. Every seat was filled. The special session had been called after the events at Hope's Harbor. Now Earth had to decide how to respond to the galaxy's plea for help. President Lisa Evans stood at the central podium. We have received formal requests for aid from 27 former council worlds, she said, including a personal message from High Chancellor Zorik. Murmurs filled the room. Everyone knew Zorik had been humanity's strongest critic. General Peter Collins stepped forward. The head of Earth's military forces looked tired but determined. I have a plan for intervention, he said, but it will require us to deploy our Nova-class warships. The room grew quiet. The Nova-class ships were Earth's newest and most advanced vessels. They had never been used in actual combat. These ships use technology we kept hidden from the Council, continued Peter. Ships that combine AI tactical systems with human intuition in ways the Council always feared. They are our best hope against both the Risen and the Void Swarm. Senator Linda Rogers rose from her seat. Her face showed her anger. Why should we help them? They laughed at our warnings. They restricted our development. They treated us like children for 50 years. Many senators nodded in agreement. Let them face the consequences of their arrogance, Linda continued. Let them see what happens when they ignore human advice. Peter looked directly at her. And then what, Senator? The Void Swarm grows stronger with each world it consumes. The Risen expand their territory daily. If we wait until all former Council worlds fall, we face both enemies alone. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for full military intervention. Others wanted to offer only limited aid. Some, like Linda, wanted to provide no help at all. Finally, Senator George Rivera offered a compromise. What if we help, but on our terms? What if we use this opportunity to reshape the galaxy in a way that respects humanity's unique strengths? He walked to the center of the chamber. I propose we draft the Accord, a new agreement that would replace the old council structure. One that gives humanity equal standing in all galactic affairs. One that allows us to develop our technologies without restriction. One that acknowledges Earth's sovereign right to defend its interests. The idea caught fire. Senators began discussing specific terms, what humans would demand in return for their help. As the discussion continued, Ambassador Richard Stone entered the chamber. He had just returned from meetings with the refugee representatives at Hope's Harbor. Senators, he said quietly, I have spoken with beings from across the galaxy. Not just leaders, but ordinary people, families who lost their homes, children who lost their parents. They are suffering greatly. The room grew silent. Yes, their leaders were wrong about us, continued Richard. Yes, they should pay a price for their mistakes. But this is also humanity's chance to show who we truly are. He looked around the chamber. Are we the type of species who helps only when it benefits us? Or are we the type who helps because it's right? His words made many senators think deeply about their position. President Lisa returned to the podium. We will vote on two matters. First, whether to intervene at all. Second, what terms to offer in the accord. The vote on intervention passed by a narrow margin. Earth would help its former allies. The vote on the accord terms took longer, with many amendments and changes suggested. In the end, they'd reached agreement. The accord would demand equal standing, technological freedom, and acknowledgement of human sovereignty. But it would also include provisions for cooperation, shared defense, and mutual aid. Richard Stone was named as Earth's representative to deliver these terms. As the session ended, he spoke with Linda, who had voted against intervention. They won't accept our terms, she said. They still think they're better than us. Richard smiled slightly. A year ago, you would have been right. But you haven't seen what I saw at Hope's Harbor. They're desperate. And more importantly, they've begun to understand that humanity's different approach isn't primitive. It's powerful. Linda looked unconvinced. And if they reject our terms? Then we tried, said Richard simply. But I don't think they will. The galaxy is changing, Linda, and humanity will help shape its new form. The next day, Richard boarded his ship for the return journey to Hope's Harbor. In his secure briefcase, he carried the Accord, the document that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. The Accord was accepted, not with joy, but with the grim understanding that came from a year of suffering. The former Council worlds had no choice. Their defenses were failing. Their economies were collapsing. The Void Swarm and Risen Hegemony continued to advance. Commander William Grant stood on the bridge of the Nova-class warship Defender. It was the flagship of the first battle group sent against the Void Swarm. 20 human ships, using technology that had been kept hidden from the Council for decades. All ships report ready, Commander, said his first officer, Lieutenant Diane Foster. William nodded. Begin Operation Lighthouse. The name had been chosen carefully. Humans would be a light in the darkness that had fallen over the galaxy, a guide to safety. The battle group moved toward the Belnary system of Tresfor, which had been partially consumed by the Void Swarm. Long-range sensors showed the strange dark ships surrounding the third planet. They don't appear to have noticed us, said Diane. They will, replied William. Activate the Nexus Protocol. Throughout the battle group, a unique system came online. The Nexus Protocol connected human tactical officers to advanced AI systems, not replacing human decisions, but enhancing them. Council races had always feared this blending of human intuition and machine processing. They called it dangerously unpredictable. That unpredictability was now their greatest hope. The Void Swarm finally detected the approaching ships. Their dark vessels changed formation, moving to surround the humans as they had surrounded countless Council fleets. They're using the same tactics they used against the Aelari and Belnary, noted Diane. William smiled slightly. That's because those tactics always worked before. They've never faced humans operating without Council restrictions. He opened a channel to the battle group. All ships, execute Pattern Omega. Let's show them something new. What followed shocked the observers from former Council worlds who watched from a safe distance. The human ships moved in ways that made no sense, splitting up when conventional wisdom said to stay together, attacking at odd angles, falling back only to suddenly charge forward. The Void Swarm, used to enemies that followed predictable patterns, could not adapt quickly enough. The strange dark ships began to fall one by one to human weapons. Their shields are adapting, reported Diane after an hour of battle. Our standard weapons are becoming less effective. As expected, said William calmly. Switch to Phase 2. Each Nova-class ship suddenly changed its attack pattern again. Weapons shifted to new frequencies. The Nexus Protocol adjusted tactics based on real-time data. The Void Swarm tried to respond, but it was too slow. The adaptability that had made humans seen as chaotic to the Council was proving to be their greatest strength. By the end of the day, the Void Swarm had been pushed out of the Belnary system. It was the first victory against them in a year. Meanwhile, on the economic front, Dr. Sandra Hill arrived on Ixion Prime, the former Council capital world. As Earth's top expert on interstellar economics, she faced the massive task of rebuilding trade networks across former Council space. "The situation is worse than we thought," she told her team as they reviewed the data. 93 major trade routes have collapsed completely. 37 worlds are facing severe shortages of essential supplies. Her assistant, Paul Adams, looked overwhelmed. "How can we possibly fix this?" Sandra smiled confidently. "The same way humans have always solved problems. We adapt. We improvise. We try things that might not work." She pulled up a star map. The Council always insisted on fixed trade routes that never changed. That's why their system collapsed so easily when stressed. "We're going to build something more flexible." Her plan was revolutionary by Council standards. Flexible shipping schedules, multiple alternate routes, decentralized distribution centers, all concepts that Council economists had rejected as inefficient and chaotic. In the contested border regions between former Council species, human peacekeepers under Colonel Frank Davis deployed to stop the fighting that had broken out without Council oversight. Frank met with local leaders from 3 species that had begun fighting over a resource-rich moon. "Your ancestors shared this moon peacefully for centuries before the Council formed," he reminded them. "You don't need their rules to cooperate." The alien leaders were skeptical at first. The Council had always managed such disputes, imposing solutions from above. "We will not tell you what to do," explained Frank, "but we will help you find your own solution." This approach, letting local worlds solve their own problems with human support rather than control, was happening across former Council space. As humanity's intervention began to stabilize the galaxy, something unexpected happened. Cultural exchange followed the military and economic aid. Species that had once looked down on humans now wanted to understand them. Professor Helen Ross led a team of human cultural experts to the rebuilt Proxima Station. The station, once the proud symbol of Council authority, was now a place of learning and cooperation. For centuries, the Council limited what aliens could learn about Earth, Helen explained to her team. They controlled what books could be shared, what history could be taught. They called it protecting less advanced species from dangerous ideas. She looked out at the stars. "Now we'll show them everything. Our art, our music, our history, even our wars and mistakes. The full human story." The aliens were fascinated. Council historians began revising their understanding of human history. They had been taught that Earth's centuries of internal conflict showed humans were primitive and violent. Now they saw something different. "You fought among yourselves for thousands of years," said Alora, the Alari scientist who had once given Susan Miller information about the Void Swarm. "But each conflict pushed you to adapt, to create new solutions." Helen nodded. "Our greatest strength comes from our greatest pain. We learned to change quickly because we had to." In the main hall of Proxima Station, Helen organized an unusual ceremony. Human children and alien younglings gathered to plant a garden together. The children brought seeds from Earth. The alien younglings brought soils from their homeworlds. "This garden will grow with elements from all our worlds," Helen told them, "just like our new galactic community." Watching from the side of the room was Council Elder Trazuk. Once a fierce critic of humanity, he had called humans barely civilized apes in Council meetings. Now he saw the careful way the human teachers worked with the children, encouraging them to think for themselves. After the ceremony, he approached Helen. "I was wrong about your species," he said simply. "We all were." Helen smiled at the elderly alien. "Understanding takes time." Trazuk looked thoughtful. "The Council existed for 40,000 years. In all that time, we changed very little. We valued stability above all else. And we seem to bring chaos," said Helen. "Not chaos," corrected Trazuk. "Growth. The galaxy was dying of stability, Professor Ross. We needed your human unpredictability more than we knew." On the military front, the tide was turning. Commander William Grant's victory against the Void Swarm had been followed by others. The combined human-alien fleets were pushing the enemy back. Human tactical systems were being shared with allied species. Admiral Susan Miller, who had led the human walkout from the Council a year earlier, now commanded the largest battle group ever assembled. 60 ships from 12 different species, all using human combat doctrines. "The Void Swarm is adapting more slowly now," reported her tactical officer. "They can't keep up with our rate of change." Susan nodded. This was the advantage humans had always had. They adapted faster than their enemies. In the economic sphere, Dr. Sandra Hill's new trade network was operational. Flexible routes carried supplies to worlds that had been cut off for months. Stations that had been abandoned were active again. "Production is up 26% across former Council space," she told Earth Command. "The new system works better than the old one ever did." On the captured Ryzen world of Dexon, Colonel Frank Davis met with Ryzen warriors who had surrendered. The large reptilian beings had expected torture or execution. The Council had always dealt harshly with defeated enemies. Instead, Frank offered them a place in the new galactic order. "If you're willing to live in peace, there's room for everyone," he told them. The Ryzen were confused by this approach. "Why would the victors share with the defeated?" asked their leader. Frank thought about human history, about how former enemies had become allies over time. "Because that's how you build something that lasts," he said, "not through control, but through choice." Throughout the galaxy, beings who had once feared or looked down on humans were beginning to understand the very qualities the Council had tried to suppress in humanity: adaptability, creativity, willingness to take risks, were saving them all. And as knowledge of Earth's culture spread, many aliens began to see humans not as primitive newcomers, but as the key to the galaxy's future, a species that could teach them all how to face change without fear. 5 years had passed since humanity left the Council. The galaxy was unrecognizable from what it had been before. The old Galactic Council no longer existed. In its place stood the Interstellar Concordat, a true coalition of equals where all species contributed according to their strengths. Captain George Bailey walked proudly through the corridors of his ship, the ISV Unity. It was the first vessel built with technologies from 12 different species working together. Its engines were Alari design, improved by human innovations. Its sensors combined Elnary precision with Bach's intuition. Every part of the ship represented cooperation. Most importantly, the crew was mixed. Humans worked alongside beings from across the galaxy, not as superiors or inferiors, but as equals. "Captain to the bridge, call the voice over the ship's system." George hurried to his command center. His first officer, an Alari named Taylor, stood waiting. "Report," said George. "The last of the Void Swarm has been pushed beyond the galactic rim," said Taylor. "Admiral Miller confirms the victory is complete." Cheers erupted across the bridge. After 5 years of hard fighting, the enemy that had once seemed unstoppable had been defeated. "And the Ryzen?" asked George. "Their representatives have arrived at Mars for the peace talks," replied Taylor. "Their new leadership seems genuinely interested in joining the Concordat." George nodded with satisfaction. Even their oldest enemies were seeing the benefits of cooperation. On Earth, the United Earth Senate was in session again. But this time, the chamber included observers from 20 alien species. They watched as Senator Laura Wilson presented the Guardian Doctrine. "5 years ago, we left the Council because they would not listen," she told the Senate. "Now, many species look to us for leadership, but we must use our influence wisely." The doctrine she proposed was simple. Humans would use their growing power not to dominate but to protect. They would share their knowledge, but never force their ways on others. They would defend the weak, but respect the rights of all. "We will be guardians, not rulers," concluded Laura. The Senate voted unanimously to approve the doctrine. The alien observers applauded. Many of them had once feared that humans would become the new tyrants of the galaxy. Instead, Humanity had shown a different path. Outside the Senate building, Ben Cooper from Earth News Network interviewed citizens about the new doctrine. 5 years ago, did you think things would turn out this way? He asked an older man. The man shook his head. I thought leaving the council was a mistake. I worried we'd be isolated, vulnerable. Instead, we're stronger than ever, and we've helped others become stronger too. Across the galaxy, the changes were visible everywhere. The rigid structures of the old council had been replaced by flexible alliances. Trade flourished under new, more equitable agreements. Species that had once been enemies worked together on joint projects. On Mars, in the new Grand Assembly Hall, representatives of 53 species gathered for the inaugural session of the Concordette's Leadership Council. The chamber was circular, with no high seats or special positions. All members sat as equals. Ambassador Laura Wilson, who had drafted the Guardian Doctrine, was chosen to close the session. She looked out at the gathered beings, some humanoid, some with tentacles, some floating in special environment tanks, some existing as patterns of light. 5 years ago, humanity walked away from a galaxy that didn't respect us, she began. We did not leave to abandon you, but to teach you. And in teaching you, we have also learned. She gestured to the great window that showed the red Martian landscape and the stars beyond. The stars belong to all of us, she continued, but only if we stand as equals under their light. The chamber erupted in approval. Even species that had once been bitter enemies applauded together. On the newly rebuilt Proxima Station, now a center for galactic culture and learning, Commander Susan Miller stood at the same window where she had once watched the human delegation leave the council 5 years before. Beside her stood Chancellor Zorik, the last leader of the old council, and now a respected elder in the new order. Did you know it would turn out this way? He asked her. Susan smiled. Not exactly. But I believed in humanity's potential, and I believe that sometimes you have to walk away to find a better path forward. Zorik nodded thoughtfully. The universe panicked when you left, but perhaps that panic was necessary. It broke patterns that had existed for too long. Susan looked out at the stars. Human ships and alien vessels moved together in harmony where once they had been segregated. The panic is over, she said. Now we build something better. Together.